Well, Australia's 10-pin bowling ace, Jason Belmonte, has once again been dominated his chosen sport of late. But given the current climate of COVID-19 dominated headlines, his most recent success has largely gone under the radar, particularly back home. Thankfully, he and his family are also back home in the central west of New South Wales, having self-isolated since they made the long trip back from the States. And he joins us now. Jason, welcome back to Fox Sports News. Welcome back to the country. We'll get to your recent journey to ensure that was safely done in a moment to Orange. Firstly, congratulations. Crowned the PBA World Champion in Las Vegas just a few weeks ago. Have you had any chance to celebrate or even let that soak in?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and thank you for the congratulations. To be honest, mate, it feels like it was a long, long time ago, and it really wasn't. I mean, what's going on around the world certainly has taken precedence over all of our conversations, including mine here at home. I mean, after the night that I won, we were able to, celebrate somewhat in a very weird environment there in Las Vegas. And then, we were out of there the next day and everything kind of just felt odd. So I'm waiting for the day that I can invite all my family and friends over, and we'll do a big celebration of the season that's happened.
Good work. Yes, you very much do deserve it. Just on that night in particular, the event itself, I mean, gosh, talk about doing things the hard way. You certainly had to come from way back in the field to get it done. Can you just take us through how the event unfolded for you?
Yeah. Well, so the World Championship is a culmination of 56 games split over an entire week of competition. And that week of competition is then split onto multiple different oil patterns. So the very first pattern is a relatively shorter length of oil down the lane, and it's typically my weakest. So I started out pretty slow, was probably, I think I was in 70th or something like that. And then as the tournament was progressing, I was kind of finding my feet a little better. And, the last day in particular just had one of those ridiculous runs where it felt like every time I threw the ball, it was a strike. So I was able to qualify in the top seed. And then the final itself was a very unusual one. Although the footage I've got there shown there is from the US Open 2 weeks prior to that. But the World Championship with the COVID-19 regulations was an empty bowling centre. Only the bowling players, immediate family and staff were allowed in. And that was a very odd thing to do.
How is that? Because by nature of that sport, it very much is something that rises on the ebb and flow of, I guess, that atmosphere that's around you. So used to having a crowd literally on the alley there watching every bit of it. To do it in front of no one, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the greatest parts about our game is that the fans can get really close to the players. So we are constantly interacting with the fans. When we make splits or, bowl good games, there's high fives to the crowd. There's a lot of communication. So, when it comes to television time, even still, if anything, the fans are probably more amped up than the players. So to bowl in an empty place when you get that strike and you're expecting to hear that cheer and you just hear your daughters and your son kind of give you like a golf clap. It was a very, very interesting experience. But, I was really grateful that I was able to perform as well as I did in front of my family, who very rarely get to come and to watch me compete.
Just on the final, after the start you made, did you think, I've let this one go?
No, I mean, I think it's difficult to really gauge. I'm always an optimistic player. Like, I believe I'm going to strike out and I believe I'm going to win. So unless it's mathematically impossible, I still believe I'm going to win the game. So it's hard for me to ever feel like, this one's gone. As long as I've got enough time and, like I said, the maths is on my side, then yeah, I'm going to get it.
So with that win, and then you look at the resume, of course, 5-time PBA Player of the Year and also having earned Player of the Decade honours, surely we can call you the world #1 now.
You can say that. That's fine. I think, it's an amazing honour. Like, you think about the best in the world at anything, and there's only one of them, right? There's only one that you can call the best of anything. So to have my competitors, the writers of bowling and the fans say things like that about me, it's a very surreal feeling. And I'm not going to let it, keep me complacent. The goal is now to not just be the best in the world or the best of the decade. It's to be the best, that's ever rolled the ball down the lane. And I've got a long way to go before I can ever say I'm in that category. But, why not? Who would have thought I would have been the best player of the decade? So why can't I, push myself to be the best player ever?
Indeed. And at the ripe young age of the mid-30s, plenty of tomorrows for you. So, yes, you've set yourself a bar, but by the way you've been going, I reckon you might just get there too, Jace. Look, in the middle of all this, of course, we're dealing with the global health crisis that is COVID-19. You were doing that exactly at the same time as trying to compete against the world's best and balancing it with trying to look after your family, Kimberly and the kids as well. How did that affect you in terms of trying to ensure you performed at your best and making sure they were safe as well? Because you effectively sent them home a little bit early.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a very interesting kind of timeline of moments. When we're competing, especially, me, I'm very focused and my concentration is to compete, it's to win. So I'm not really listening to news broadcasts or, scrolling through Twitter. So at the end of the second to last day of competition, we had an actual day off, which was scheduled. And that's when everyone started talking. And I started talking to my wife and I said, what's going on back home? I mean, it's all a little bit weird over here, but what's happening back home? And then we got word that our government was looking to close up the borders. So I said, I don't know about you, Kimberly, but I'd like to get home and quarantine myself in Oz rather than here in the US. So we changed all of our flights, sent them back home to Sydney as soon as possible, and I was only an hour or two behind them. So, then we got home, and this is how we live now. This is a very... I mean, I don't think anyone has ever lived through something quite like this before. And hopefully, we can stick together and we do the right thing by each other and we can end this quickly. But I'm practicing my bowling here in the hallway. That's about what, to the extent of my practices, is going to be.
Don't take on this man in carpet bowls, ladies and gentlemen. Look, just briefly to finish, you are a proud product of Orange, and you've also been doing pretty good things for the region since the bushfires of our recent summer. Can you just tell us what you've managed to raise in terms of funds and how that's had an immediate help?
Yeah, well, I mean, that really feels like it never happened. I mean, that's how long ago that feels. But I was in the US competing when the fires were at their worst, and I wanted to do something. I couldn't be home. I wasn't around people that were really suffering, so I wanted to do something that I could. And using my platform in the bowling industry, I set a goal of $150,000 US, and we fell just a couple of $1,000s short of that goal, raising it through my competitors, myself competing on the lanes. I was donating for every strike that I was getting in title matches and semi-finals. My competitors were doing the same thing. Sponsors, just fans coming up to me with like $5 US and would just give it to me and say, can you add that to the fund? We feel really bad for you and your country. So, to raise what I think in Aussie dollars now, it's near $240,000 by, having a website, pushing people towards it. I'm just really, really proud. And I hope that that money, does go to the people that it really needs. It's, it went to the three funds: Wires, Wildlife, the Red Cross, and to the Rural Fire Services. But, now that we've got COVID-19, it almost feels like people have forgotten that, there are people rebuilding. There are animals that are still displaced from their environments. So it's hard to juggle it all, but you've got to try to, keep the awareness of stuff that has happened as well as the things that are happening.
Yeah, well played on and off the lanes, Jace. Great to catch up with you. I will call you at world number one. Good on you, mate. We'll talk soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.